Yeah, sure.
But I don't think you live that way, do you? I think you live as if love is real. I think you live as if justice is real. I don't think you live as if love is whatever you want to make it, and justice is whatever you want to make it. And if I want to haul back and slap him and call that justice, well, then that's justice. I don't think you live that way. I think you live your life as if I walk up to him and smack him, you're going to say to me, hey man, what did you do that for? That's wrong. And I'm going to say, oh yeah, what is wrong?
Sure. I mean, we can share similar morals that don't require religion to have that. Like we can morally agree together that it's wrong to murder people without having a religious foundation in order to have that opinion. You know, we can socialize our kids to not murder people and say that's wrong.
Sure.
We don't need that foundation initially.
Right. But if you're going to be intellectually honest, you're going to have to acknowledge, today I think murdering is wrong. If tomorrow I think it's right, I'm not wrong tomorrow. It's all relative.
Yeah, that's true. It's relative.
Yeah. Okay, now if you think about that deeply enough, you'll realize Mother Teresa and Adolf Hitler are in the same place, the fertilizer pit, which means it ultimately doesn't matter what you do with your life. If you want to feed hungry people, or if you want to slaughter people in World War II, it doesn't matter ultimately, because you're all headed to the same place, the fertilizer pit. So in other words, what you do with your life is insignificant. It really doesn't matter.
I don't know. I feel like I can see significance in making people's lives better. I don't need to believe in a God to feel like my life is more meaningful if I help people.
Yeah, but if there is no God, you're an accident. Sure. I'm an accident.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have innate meaning and significance in an accident. Your number came up in a Monte Carlo game. My number came up in a Monte Carlo game. We're just freak accidents.
Yeah.
Right, well, that tells you about the cheapness of life. Life is cheap. Life is expendable. And if you think about it, racism is not ultimately wrong. Murder's not ultimately wrong. Sexism is not ultimately wrong. It just is. And what is. It's not right, it's not wrong, it just is.
I feel like people are more, like we should give people more credit as far as their ability to establish their own morality without having to follow an ancient set of morality. You know, like I feel like we can all intelligently decide that murder and racism and things like that are not okay without having to be told that. You know,
Yeah.
like we can come up with that pretty easily.
Confronted by a racist, confronted by someone abusing an innocent child, I don't think you're going to say, well, from my perspective, from my culture, abusing innocent children is wrong. But I understand that from your culture, it's right. And I'm not going to be some imperialistic, colonialistic, arrogant twit trying to lay my culture on you. Instead, if your culture says that raping women is good, go ahead and rape. I don't think you're going to live that way.
No.
I think your conscience and your rational mind won't let you. And I'm standing here saying that is one of the clearest pieces of evidence that God is real.
I guess I would argue that maybe it makes it easier for us to get along better when we don't murder each other, when we don't rape each other, when we don't, kidnap each other. Like it would be in the best interest of everybody to not do those really horrible things to each other.
Good. According to who? According to who is it in the best interest?
Everybody that's living together, I guess.
Everybody who lives around here that agrees with you.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're a white South African at the time of apartheid, obviously if you're a white American at the time of the Dred Scott decision, obviously if you're a Nazi German living in Germany in the 1930s and 40s, there would be a strong disagreement. And if there is no God, it's all a crapshoot, it's all relative. See, all you got to do is, if you're a moral relativist, is get married. And then remember, when your spouse hurts you, you can't look them in the face and say, you should not have done that. Instead, you got to say, well, from my perspective, that was wrong, but I understand that from your perspective, it's okay. You can't live that way. It doesn't make sense. You contradict yourself. See, that's why Jesus Christ makes so much sense, because he talks about goodness, he talks about sin, and by golly, that's life, friends. You know that people are good to you at times. You know that also people are mean to you at times and sin, and it hurts. It doesn't feel good at all, and you know it's wrong. Yeah, why is it wrong? because all people have value that comes from God. We're not ultimately insignificant. We're human beings created in the image of God. We all have value, and that's why if I dump on you, that's evil. If I'm disrespectful, that's evil. And that's not a cultural bias. That's reality. Because you're not a piece of dirt. You're a human being created in the image of God with innate intrinsic value. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess I just feel like we can hold those same beliefs without having to tie it to religion. Like we can all have our sort of like moral fabric that we follow, and we can transfer that over. Like, because for example, there are countries that don't have Christianity, right? And the idea is you would bring the morality of Christianity over to that country via proselytation, right? And I'm just thinking like you can do something similar to that with your established moral fabric without religion being tied to it. You know, I can follow the same morality as y'all without having to believe in God, because I was raised on the same morality that the Christian religion preaches. If that makes sense.
But here's the breakdown. The breakdown is I'm not a good person. The breakdown is I'm a sinner. The breakdown is I need outside help, and that's what Jesus Christ offers me. Now, maybe you're different from me. Maybe you're just a good person. But I got my serious doubts about that. Because I think the evidence is we all are a combination of good and evil. I blow it at times. I think you probably blow it at times as well. I am self-centered. You can be self-centered.
Sure.
I am mean at times. You can be mean at times. We need outside help. And that's what Jesus Christ offers us. Spiritual strength, spiritual help to really love, to really respect, to really treat people with dignity and honor. And that's cool.
Yeah, I'm okay with you guys believing in that, and if that gives you what you need in order to feel, better or to get through troubles that you have, then I'm totally okay with that. I'm not the kind of person to tell someone that they can't or can't believe something. I'm just saying that I don't feel that I need to believe in something in order to be a good person.
Right. But if you want to be a good person, and that agrees with what Jesus taught ethically, and then he goes on and claims to be God in human form, because his ethical teachings make so much sense to you, don't you think it would be wise to read the Gospels and to examine the evidence that points to this Jesus being reliable?
I don't know. As far as like whether or not he's real, that just goes into like seeing whether or not he exists, reading the books and all that. I haven't read into it yet. I haven't read the Gospel.
Okay, well please read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the historical eyewitness accounts of Jesus of Nazareth. What do you think?
I applaud him for talking about the way in which you can think through the utility of something like the Golden Rule. The logic behind that, you can't argue with it. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? If you brought that around the world, there'd be a lot more peace. And I hope that's what we're both pursuing, right, is peace.
Yeah.
But also, he's talking about truth, that Jesus made a truth claim, and you have to read through the ethics of chapters in Matthew, Sermon on the Mount, think through, do those ethics apply not just in this country, but around the world where there's another country? Does that apply to that culture in that time as well? Is there such a thing as universal truth, absolute morality? And hopefully the Golden Rule points you to that being, yes, there is a right way to live. There is that good life, that abundant life that Jesus talked about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And if you affirm life, it would seem to me that you'd be interested in life after death. Jesus Christ was dead. He historically rose from the dead. And this one who historically rose from the dead promises eternal life to all who trust in him. The thought of your death does not thrill me. I hate the thought of your death. But I have found in Jesus Christ a confidence that indeed there is life after death, not just because Jesus talked about it. Lots of people talk about it. But because 3 days after he died, he physically rose from the dead. That gives me an incredibly high degree of certainty that indeed there is life after death because Jesus rose from the dead. And I would be excited if you'd put your faith in Christ, because I want to get to know you better in heaven.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, if I die and I end up being wrong, then I'm wrong, and I'd be happy to be able to be in heaven as a result, or whichever one, I guess. But just for right now, I don't believe in it.
Okay, but remember, if you're wrong, you're losing everything. Okay? I would hope that would motivate you to study the issue very seriously. Because if you're wrong, and if Jesus Christ is the truth, and if God really does love you and wants you to go to heaven, and if you reject him, you lose everything. You lose heaven, you lose eternal life, you lose your own life. That's horrible. So, that's not a good reason to accept Christ, I don't think, but it's a real good reason to study your head off to try and figure out, is Jesus Christ reliable or is he a fool?
In the Bible, we've got Jewish people, we've got Muslim people, and we've got Christians. And for some reason, it seems like they may all be worshiping the same God because it seems like they all stemmed from the same place. So a lot of people will have the idea of like, oh, it's the same God, you're just going at it in different directions. Like, what is your point, and kind of how do you, what do you say about that, really? I don't really know how to really put it in good words.
It's a fantastic question. Very relevant. Thank you for raising it. All right, the question this woman asked is, aren't all religions basically the same? So why, Cliff, do you have to get so consumed by this passion for Jesus Christ? Why can't you just chill out and realize that be it Buddha, Muhammad, the avatars of Hinduism, or Jesus Christ, it's all the same? Well, it's real simple. Jesus Christ was not a cultural prejudice. Jesus Christ was not a personal bias. Jesus Christ was an historical person who lived, taught, died, and rose from the dead. Jesus Christ was not an American. Jesus Christ was not a Republican. He was not a Democrat. Jesus Christ did not teach socialism or capitalism. He talked about the kingdom of God. Jesus Christ was not a 6'1" white male. Jesus Christ was a Jew, lived in Palestine, that land bridge where Europe, Asia, and Africa come together. Now, Jesus Christ insisted that he's not just for one race or one culture. He insisted that he's the eternal God revealing himself in finite form. Jesus insisted that God is personal and he loves you. See, ma'am, whenever it comes to a personal relationship, like it or not, the facts matter. The name, the likes and dislikes, the character, what they enjoy doing matters because it's a real person.
Yeah.
All right, Jesus says, God is not an idea. God is a real being, a personal being who actually loves you and me and who wants to live in relationship with you and me. Well, guess what, friends? That means the facts matter. His name is not Muhammad. His name is not Siddhartha Gautama. His name is not Krishna. His name is Jesus Christ. He lived, taught, died, and rose from the dead, and he insisted that the way to heaven was not by working off your bad karma through a cycle of rebirths. He insisted that the way to heaven was not by being a good old redneck in Texas, a good old boy. No, he insisted that the way to heaven was through his death on a cross, where he sacrificed his life to pay the penalty for our wrongdoing. Now, he's either blowing smoke or he's speaking the truth. Yes, sir.
Well, if you're going based on facts, wasn't his name not even really Jesus Christ? That was translated from Savior. If you translate it from the direct Hebrew, it would be Joshua, from Yahushua.
Yeah, and Joshua is Jesus.
And then how did he become white in the text when he was from Palestine?
He did not become white in the text. He became white in pictures that painters paint. But Jesus was never a Caucasian. He was a Jew. Never was Jesus wrapped in an American flag. He was wrapped in swaddling clothes. Never was Jesus a Republican or a Democrat. He was a Jew, a first century Jew. That's who Jesus really is and was.
I agree, concept of heaven and hell, because if, like, someone like Hitler, I would argue that it's justice as well, because, you know, how is Hitler, what he did to 6 million people, how does he get justice, you know, after he's gone?
Very good.
So it makes sense that there would be, in that sense, after, like in afterlife, that would be, I guess, not paid, but return.
Justice.
The justice, right?
Yep. Yes, sir.
The next thing I wanted to follow up, and this goes into the payment and forgiveness.
Yeah.
In the Old Testament, I believe it is in Ezekiel. I can't quote you exactly. There is the concept of forgiveness in there as well, where I believe God is narrating. And he's saying that if the goodness of a good person, a righteous person, that I guess shows that's on him, and
Right.
the wickedness of the wicked
Yep.
is on him.
Right.
But if the wicked person turns away and repents sincerely,
Yep.
then he can be forgiven.
Yes.
And this is before Jesus arrived, and this is a concept of forgiveness shown in the Old Testament.
Right.
I think it was in the days of Ezekiel.
Correct. You're right.
So how does that concept correlate to Jesus coming? I know they're different religions, and also I guess that ties into how do people in other religions resolve the matter of forgiveness for them if they don't believe in Jesus Christ, whether if maybe they didn't hear of Jesus Christ, who knows? So I guess that's...
I'll take the first part of the question as far as just, I think you raised that issue of how do we make sense of someone who brings hell on earth. And if you look at your history book, you would say, yeah, Adolf Hitler is pretty close, right? That he wrote a book, Mein Kampf, talking about my suffering, my struggle, and looked for a scapegoat. And that was a certain race of people, as well as a very clear agenda that they had. And so there was a split in the German church between those who aligned with the Third Reich and those in the confessing church who very much stood against that ideology. And I think part of what you're recognizing there is a person who is so embittered, so looking to blame, that it drives them to a type of evil that they did that we can learn from and hopefully not repeat, right? As we look back on that and say, yeah, that was really wrong, what happened. And just because the Holocaust happened and it was written by mostly survivors, doesn't mean we discredit them just because they were there and they had an agenda. No, the Holocaust happened. People like Viktor Frankl wrote about it. That I would encourage you to read that book. It's a great book called Man's Search for Meaning. But part of it is thinking through, okay, this issue of good and evil, it's very clear here that this person brought hell on earth with Nazi Germany.
Okay, so what is forgiveness? Forgiveness is not me saying to you, hey, let's forget about you sticking the knife in my back. Let's act like it never happened.
Right.
That's not forgiveness.
Wouldn't be sincere, right?
Forgiveness is, you did me dirty. Instead of getting revenge and doing dirty to you, I'm going to absorb the debt, absorb the hit. And instead of striking back, I'm going to absorb it and forgive you so that we can be reconciled and continue our friendship. But let's get one thing straight. Forgiveness always costs somebody. If you rip me off for $100, either I'm going to absorb that hit and forgive you, or I'm going to get $100 from you.
But if you forgive me, there's no cost to you forgiving me. I've done the damage if I took $100 from you. And if you forgive me, I come to you and say, I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
I'll give you $200 back, and you sincerely forgive me. There's no cost for you forgiving me, but the penalty is on me because I did the dirty deed.
Right. No, I would disagree. I would say that if I steal $100 from you, I have hurt you. And I owe you. When you forgive, you're saying, you don't owe me. I am absorbing the hurt. I'm absorbing the hit. So when God forgives us, it doesn't mean, oh, boys will be boys, girls will be girls, let's act like it never happened. No. Somebody has to take the hit, pay the debt. That is what Jesus Christ did on the cross. He paid the debt, paid the penalty that we deserve for our wrongdoing.
Isn't the sinner paying the debt because he's the one who did the wrong? So that's on him. He has to live with what he did.
Good.
Right?
Yes, there are consequences, correct. But no, the ultimate penalty is hell. for my sin. And Christ, when he died on the cross, took the hell that I deserve for my wrongdoing in his body so that I could be forgiven and go to heaven. In the Y where I played basketball, a buddy came up to me and said, Cliff, is there a difference between sins? And I said, good question. In one sense, no. There's no difference between sins. Meaning by that, all sin separates me from God. The murderer murders, and that separates him from God. I hate. Never murdered, but I've hated. My hatred separates me from God. But all sins are different in their ethical consequences. Obviously, it's ethically worse for me to murder you than it is for me to be mean to you.
Right.
So there's a difference in that sense, yes, in terms of some of the consequences.
That's why murderers can go to jail for life. And
Exactly.
right.
But the reason that self-righteousness on my part is wrong is because although I've never murdered, I have hated. Although I've never raped, I have lusted. And according to Christ, I'm not this great person that I wish you all would believe that I am. I am a dirty, rotten sinner. That's why I need Jesus Christ. Does that make sense?
It does. The point you made about the sacrificial system,
Yes.
when they sacrificed animals, to my understanding, I believe, I don't know if it's in Leviticus or not, I don't know exactly where, but the sacrificial system was for unintentional sins, meaning that sins that, because the Hebrew Israelite, the Jewish people,
Right.
were have their covenant with
Yeah.
God in the Old Testament, and they were supposed to be like an example or like a light to the nations, as the scripture
Right.
quotes. And so what this sacrificial system did it's for unintentional sins, meaning like if someone didn't know, like I know I did something wrong, I don't remember, or it wasn't like a clear thing, like I stole something,
Right.
You know, it was like it's not like I hated or I did something.
Yeah.
And so they would sacrifice an animal for something they don't remember or don't know what they did wrong.
Right.
But the example of forgiveness for like stealing or something like that is given like by Ezekiel without any kind of sacrifice, is with sincerity and a true, because only the person in his heart knows the relationship between him and God, or her and God.
Right.
So no one else can know your heart but God.
Right.
So in that way, the forgiveness can be obtained as Ezekiel says, by asking sincerely.
Yes, but what the Old Testament is pointing to is a sacrifice for sin. And what the New Testament shows is, indeed, Jesus Christ was that sacrifice for sin. Someone has to pay the penalty for our wrongdoing. Christ claims he paid that penalty when he died on a cross. C.S. Lewis was walking through the faculty lounge at Oxford, and the faculty was having a debate. What's the difference between Jesus Christ, Christianity, and every other major world religion? And C.S. Lewis said, that's easy. Grace. Grace is God's unmerited, unearned, unworked for forgiveness, generous gift of life eternal that he gives us when we put our faith in Jesus Christ. That's grace. Every other world religion says, here are the rules. Keep the rules, and if you do a good enough job, maybe you'll make it.
Yeah, that's where doctrine gets tricky, right? Where people focus on the rules. Isn't that what I don't know if it was
That's
Pharisees
right,
or
the Pharisees.
They were like too focused on the rules
That's
to
right.
see like how they're treating people and
Exactly.
like that.
Robert.
Just to add to that, mentioning Ezekiel, in Ezekiel, it reads, when the sovereign Lord says, "For I take no pleasure in the death of anyone, but desire that you repent and live." And again in Ezekiel, further on after that verse, it also says, "For I take no pleasure in the death of the wicked." It's God speaking. I think part of that is important to remember when you're reading about, goats being killed and people groups getting wiped out, is what is that verse, what are those verses talking about when God's saying, "I take no pleasure in the death of anyone"? Like, does that give you an idea into the heart of God, into this idea that God isn't just some cosmic judge who's detached from the world, but who's really grieved over wrongdoing here and is willing to pay the sacrifice for it.
It really shows you the mercy of
Right,
God.
exactly. That actually there's more mercy in some sense in the in the Old Testament than in the New, where you have the crucifixion.
I believe that I don't believe in a God because I don't believe he's personal. The definition of personal is as being to relate to somebody else, and I don't like relate to God. Everything you just told me is just an idea, and it's nothing I've ever seen or experienced, so I'm not going to believe in that. What I do see, and as you say, to follow the evidence, I believe, I mean, this matters. You know, every one of y'all matter, obviously. You know, I'm not, that's why we have morals and standards. So, but I believe that God is impersonal, basically.
Okay, good. Then if what you say is true, that God is impersonal, what is love? What is reason? It's all just accidents, man. We just make it up, right?
Yeah, sure.
But I don't think you live that way, do you? I think you live as if love is real. I think you live as if justice is real. I don't think you live as if love is whatever you want to make it, and justice is whatever you want to make it. And if I want to haul back and slap him and call that justice, well, then that's justice. I don't think you live that way. I think you live your life as if I walk up to him and smack him, you're going to say to me, hey, man, what did you do that for? That's wrong. And I'm going to say, oh, yeah? What is wrong? What does that mean? Is that your own personal trip that you're trying to lay on me with your imperialistic, colonialistic approach? Or is there a real value of justice that I have violated when I hauled back and smacked him? Well, if it's a real value that I violated when I hauled back and smacked him, then there's got to be a personal God who creates a value of justice that is beyond my prejudice, beyond my culture, beyond my imperialistic attitudes.
Sure.
You see, so I don't think you honestly can escape God, a personal God, because of the way you live your life, because of the way you experience life. Does that make any sense?
So you're saying that because of my moral beliefs, that is what, like, I'm based on a God?
I'm saying that because you live as if your moral beliefs were right, not just a taste, not just a relative prejudice, because you live your life as if justice is a real value, that points to a lawgiver, some type of personal God. Now, if there is no personal God, you're right. I could say today, hitting him is not good. But if tomorrow I say, hitting him is good, I'm just as right. I'll give you a biblical definition of justice is respecting the dignity of another human being. And that's why when Dr. Martin Luther King sat in a jail in Birmingham, Alabama, he wrote a letter from the Birmingham jail. And he said, guess what, guys? In spite of the fact that the great state of Alabama says segregation is good, there's a law above the law of the great state of Alabama, and according to that law, segregation is evil. What on earth was Dr. Martin Luther King thinking about? He was thinking about a personal God who is just, who creates and defines justice. And I really don't care what the legislation of the great state of Alabama says. They're wrong when they say that segregation is right. Well, Dr. Martin Luther King's whole argument is based on exactly what I was just saying to this gentleman. If you're going to live your life as if the great state of Alabama is wrong when it says that segregation is right, what's your reason? Well, the reason would be there's an eternal God who's a personal being, who's just, who created a value of justice, and when you are racist, you are violating not some Ivy League professor who thinks racism is naughty. No, you're violating the eternal God whose character is just, who's given you a conscience. You're created in his image. And therefore, you better wake up and smell the coffee, exercise your conscience, and realize racism is really evil. That's the basis of justice. It's exactly what Dr. Martin Luther King appealed to in his letter from the Birmingham jail. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Who says that that's right? Who says that God's right?
Who says that God's right?
How are we just not obligated to act out of common decency to the people around us?
Who defines common decency?
Well, I think he's asking, does God have permission to play God? What does that mean?
Well, you answer that one.
So he just highlighted one point in history. Another point is in the Nuremberg trials, after the Nazis were defeated. Does that mean that they were wrong just because it was some cultural law of the land there? No. In the Nuremberg trials, they're held accountable not because it's wrong against the nation of Israel, but because it is a universal absolute that each person has worth and dignity based upon the image of God upon them. That they're held to account in a court of law because, the officers were saying, well, I was just following orders. I was just following orders when they said to exterminate this people group. How are you going to hold them accountable? Is it just might makes right? Is there only one commandment? Eat or be eaten? Is there? Is that it? I hope not. I think we're both recognizing that we're trying to have a personal connection here and live on this planet in peace, right? And so part of that is, well, is there a God who promotes peace, who is loving, who offers forgiveness? And how do we hold people account justice in something like the Nuremberg trials?
Okay, so here's where it gets a little personal. I'm standing here telling you that you're just like me. You're valuable because you create the image of God, but you have defaced that image. You've sinned, as I have. We've gotten separated from a personal God who really loves us. Now, this personal God became man in Jesus Christ, bled and died on a cross to forgive us and to tie us back into an eternal love relationship with the living God. So now the ball's in our court. How are we going to respond to Jesus Christ? Are we going to say, I'm sorry, you're wrong? Or are we going to say, I'm sorry, Cliff, Ben, the evidence is Christ is reliable, therefore to put my faith in Christ is a wise decision. Can I prove Christ? Absolutely no way. Does the evidence point to Christ's reliability? Yes, sir, it does.
It's easier to be like my morality is right because it's enacted by God, but I feel like I can have a better morality than someone without the presence of religion. Like if my morality makes people cooperate the best and makes people treat each other the best way, like I'm all for taking tenets from religion to bolster a morality, but I don't think the belief in God is necessary in order for your morality to be better. That's why like if
But isn't that a subjective claim? Isn't that a very subjective claim? Or maybe you're saying it's objective, that collectively the masses determine might makes right or not.
Well, it is a subjective claim at the end of the day, but I just, I feel like my morality would be better than someone else's, and that can be, I guess,
but you can only say that up to an extent, right? Until they disagree with you, and then you're at a conundrum. It's an ad infinitum kind of back and forth, right? Of who's right and who's wrong and who gets to decide, right? If there is no God, universal moral absolutes, what's the foundation? I think that's your question, right? Is what's the foundation? If it's not God, then what do we base universal moral absolutes in?
I guess that's a point to grapple with.
Okay, here's an illustration. I think we've gone over this one quite a bit now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, Nuremberg trials that Robert referred to early. 1945. Nazi officers are being judged. They had a brilliant lawyer. Brilliant lawyer stands up and says, wait a second, time out. You allies from outside Germany are coming into our culture, into our country, and you're judging what we did. Who do you guys think you are? You didn't grow up in this culture, Nazi Germany. We did. Who do you think you are coming in and telling us that gassing Jews is wrong? The Nuremberg trials shut down until Robert Jackson, the American consul, stood up and said, there is a law above the law of Nazi Germany. There's a law above the laws of the Allies. And according to that law, gassing Jews is wrong. And the Nuremberg trials kicked back in, and those Nazi officers were convicted. Now, what's Robert Jackson talking about? He's talking about the moral absolutes that God has defined, that are not restricted by culture.
And that's Article 1 of the United Nations report after that in 1948, is all human beings are born with freedom and with equal worth and dignity. And so that's what we're living under right now.
Right.
See, so that's what you've got to grapple with. Because my understanding is that you do not believe there's a God, therefore morality is relative. So what on earth gives the Allies the right to go into Nazi Germany, conduct the Nuremberg trials, and convict Nazis that what they did was wrong? Wait a second. You Allies, you're not from Nazi Germany. You don't know what you're talking about. I hope you're not going to come in and lay your trip on us. And my point is, I think the Allies did right. Why? Because morality is not defined by the Allies or by the Nazis, ultimately. It's defined by God. And therefore, when I go into a cannibalistic culture, if I tell the cannibals it is wrong to eat human beings, it's wrong because I'm an American. It's not wrong because I'm a white guy. It's wrong because all human life has intrinsic value. Well, how can that be true? Only if there's a God who has created human life with intrinsic value. I mean, think about it. I don't give myself value. That's a joke. I'm the greatest. I'm the greatest. Oh, really, Cliff? Why are you the greatest? Well, because I say I'm the greatest. Well, that's wonderful, Cliff. But if in reality you're a hunk of primordial slime evolved to a higher order, not only are you not the greatest, you are cheap, buddy. Really cheap. You're an accident. But if we all are human beings created in the image of God, then we all have innate value. And that's the way we experience life. And that points us to God. Man, all I can say is it's been a stinking honor to talk with you.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming
Thank
over.
you so much for the way you have responded and talked.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm planning on coming by and hopefully being able to talk with you more on a couple days further.
Please
if
do.
I'm not taking over anybody else. that
No.
wants to ask questions.
You have the floor. You thinking, your sincerity, as my wife pointed out, is in contrast to some other people's lack of sincerity.
Yeah, I don't like
So-
it when people come into situations like this hostile. One, because I think it makes everybody close up.
Yeah.
Versus if you come in and just genuinely ask questions, people
Exactly.
are way more open.
Yep.
So,
Thank you, sir, for the way you've conducted yourself.
yeah, for sure. Anyone else?
Did
wants
you
to
have
ask
another
questions?
issue?
So you brought up that during the Nuremberg trials, it was referenced that there is a law above German law.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you proposed that was God, that was God's law. Yes. Or
Well, yeah,
you did?
it's a value of justice that is defined by God.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's not at all possible that they were referencing, in fact, the United Nations Universal Bill of Rights, which entitles everyone is endowed to reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. And that was actually what they were finding them in breach of when they gassed Jews, not the laws of God.
Well, but what the United Nations was doing, it was taking basically a Judeo-Christian concept of justice
Is
and
acting
compassion.
in a brotherly manner to people a strictly Christian?
It's a Judeo-Christian concept, yes. It's right out of the Old Testament, the New Testament. I mean, think about it. If there is no God, what is compassion?
Compassion is seeing value in the people that you socialize with and have positive relationships with and relating to them.
Okay, according to you. But if I define compassion as raping a woman, what's wrong with that?
That's not sorry,
It's okay.
raping is inherently in breach of someone's bodily autonomy, which is considered to be one of the most basic human rights.
What's a right? Who defines rights?
We do.
We do. So it's a creation of the human mind. So then the question becomes, which human mind do you trust to define rights accurately?
Well, I think that civil rights and human rights have been defined since the inception of human culture and has continued to evolve to encompass more rights. For example, trans rights are a relatively new issue that wasn't as big of a concept 10 years ago. And what a lot of people are saying that you might disagree with, but the paradigm is changing to where, it is trans people should have the right to identify how they want to identify and to be able to transition and give themselves the best quality of life possible. That is a changing of the paradigm relating to human rights. So rights are continually informed by society. And it's not informed by a single person.
I think we both agree on, correct me if I'm wrong, we agree on how those people should be viewed, right? That they're human beings with equal worth, value, dignity, right? And so we're not really concerned with that view. It's more, okay, how are we going to protect the freedom that they have to make those choices as they do, right? Because oftentimes people want to act out in hatred against that which is different from them, right? But part of the understanding of what compassion is empathizing with another and walking in their shoes, right? Walking in their shoes, and that takes a lot of study of cultural context, whether it's trans rights, gay rights, whatever it might be, thinking through, okay, what happened here? Obviously there is wrong being done to certain people groups, so how do we protect them, right? And part of what his point, I think, was in referencing the Nuremberg trials, was that there's going to be an appeal to something outside of ourselves. Something outside of ourselves that affirms the intrinsic worth of another who might be totally different from us, right? Because so often we make God in our own image, right? We make God as to be what affirms whatever likes, whatever things that we do, but we never really ask God, God, what do you want from me, right? What is it that might be in disagreement with my own life, right? And that's something that's very hard to wrestle with, right?
All right. If he is a collection of atoms that have accidentally come together, to talk about him having rights is nonsensical. Why? When you say he has rights, what you're saying is he has intrinsic innate value. And because of his value, I had better respect his rights to life, liberty, whatever. But if he's just an accidental collection of atoms, he has no innate value, which means he has no rights in an absolute sense. How do you think about Jesus? Have you put your faith in him, or are you skeptical? Or
I think he was a moral, upstanding guy.
right?
I don't think personally he was worthy of worship, just like I wouldn't worship MLK. But I do think certain of his aspects are worthy of respect just because he was a nice guy.
Okay. Now, because you respect him, how do you handle his claim to be God in human form? Doesn't that put him in the category of lunatic, if he's just a man?
Well, there are many people that are worthy of respect that are put in the category of lunatic. Plato, Socrates, Pythagoras, many of them had cults in their name because some of the lunatic things they said right next to some of the many logical things they said. So you always have to take people of great respect in history and past times with a grain of salt, just because of what they knew at the time and their cultures and how they were raised.
Right. But in light of the fact that Christ taught that humility was a virtue and pride and arrogance were a sin, and then he goes out and claims to be God in human form, if he's not God in human form, he is one arrogant twit.
I get that you look at the teachings of Christianity, it's like, yes, this applies very well to like how logically life functions around me, minus the miracles. What's to say that those miracles are more believable than, for example, some of the more fantastic things that happen in Roman myth or Greek myth? You know, because they also teach lessons through their myths about how you should behave in life. So I guess,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's real simple. If an atheist says to me, that was a miracle, I'm going to say, you got to be kidding me. If there is no God, it's impossible that miracles take place. Right?
So
I am not going, but if someone tells me they're a theist, and they tell me about a miracle, I'm going to say, yeah, that's possible. If you think God exists, if God really does exist, then miracles are not stupid. They're not irrational. A miracle is a supernatural being changing a natural law that supernatural being created in the first place and performing what you and I call a miracle.
I would just like to say that when atheists say, oh, that was a miracle, they don't mean that literally. They mean it as a figure of speech.
Absolutely, yes, I understand that.
Yeah.
Right, hyperbole. Right, but if an atheist said that was a real miracle, I would say, my first comment would be, wait a second. It's impossible for miracles to happen according to your worldview, because there's no supernatural God. See, if there's no supernatural God, miracles do not happen. But if there is a supernatural God, then it's possible that miracles happen. So, when I'm confronted by a Hindu who says, a miracle happened, I say, okay, I respect you. You think that God exists, therefore you think there's a miracle that happened? Okay, maybe it did. I'll have to check on the evidence. I guess obviously what I'm driving at, although you might not know this, is I have my atheist friends in a real bind intellectually. Because every one of my atheist friends is a really nice guy or a really nice woman. I have no bad atheist friends. All of my atheist friends are great people. In fact, they're such great people that they really think that racism is really objectively wrong. They really do. My atheist friends really think that stealing is absolutely wrong. But you see, my point to them is, you're an intellectual hypocrite. Because if you say there is no God, but there is an objective moral absolute, you're contradicting yourself. And the only reason I bring in the word hypocrite is because you know that those objective morals are real. Your experience of life teaches you that. But with your head, you're crossing God off, which means morality really is relative. It's not absolute.
Oh yeah, so how do we get from there, like from miracles, like an atheist saying that was a miracle, to morality? Like I can talk about the morality part, but you know, I haven't heard any. Like I could imagine you would bring up the fact that, you know, people didn't believe in Christianity and then they saw like water get turned into wine or the seas get split and then say that's a miracle as an example of an atheist saying, oh, that was a miracle. I don't know if that was the example you were going to bring up or not, but
no, what I'm simply driving at is, if you believe something, one of the ways to test your belief is to ask yourself, can I live this out consistently? And if I believe something and I can't live it out consistently, I better go back and question, hey, is my belief right or is it really wrong?
Okay, so like for you, it's easier to live out Christian beliefs than it would be to live out Roman beliefs or what have you. Okay, I understand.
And my point is, every one of my atheist friends finds it much easier to live out the moral absolutes that Jesus taught than they find it easy to live out their moral relativism. See, I would encourage you, think very carefully on this campus. How many professors and students believe everything is relative? Pretty good number, right? Okay, fine. Steal their backpack and see how they react. Have them get married. Have their spouse do something mean to them. And then see if they can live out their moral relativism. Guys, you can't do it. You cannot live out moral relativism consistently. It doesn't work. Everything in your experience of life shows you that was really wrong. When you stole my backpack, when you treated me that way, honey, that was really wrong.
Right.
Okay?
I understand.
You bet. A bunch of atheists can get together and say human beings have value. But what those atheists have to acknowledge is, tomorrow, if they take that value away from people, that is just as true, just as legitimate as when today they say human beings have value.
That's when atheists come together and say this person has value, and when a society agrees that there is value in personhood.
Yeah.
Everyone's personhood is subject to their own, like, your view of someone else's validity of their personhood is intrinsically bound to your own value of your personhood. So,
right, that's the golden rule.
Yes, exactly. To be able to say, oh, tomorrow I can deny him basic human rights and I could murder him if I wanted to, and he has no intrinsic value, that leaves us all subject to the same, like, being killed and dehumanized and exactly that. And so, as a social species that benefits when we work together and, like, finds value in our bonds with each other, we don't do that.
We don't?
We don't.
Existed before Christianity, right? So
Yeah.
why would you say that that's a Judeo-Christian idea if people treated each other that way before Christianity existed? Is it not possible that that's a almost like maybe even a biological inherent idea that we all possess, that we should treat each other in this way for the sake of our, safety and for the sake of those that we love safety?
It better be, because that's the whole force of my argument with you guys. See, what I'm saying is exactly what you just said. Guess what, guys? God created all of us with a conscience. So innately, although we don't have to obey our conscience, we have a free will and we can violate our conscience, innately we do understand, wow, respecting another human being is the right way to live. And when I don't respect another human being, hopefully I'm going to still experience guilt. Well, why is the conscience a part of the human experience? It doesn't come from matter and energy. This matter and energy has no ability to make a distinction between right and wrong, justice and injustice. It takes a thinking mind to understand right and wrong. And if there's no thinking mind prior to the human mind, then it's the human mind that creates right and wrong, which means it's all relative. And you see, you can't live that relativism out consistently, especially you with as sensitive a conscience as you have and as good a mind as you have. And you. I think you're in that category as well.
Thank you.
I respect your conscience. I respect your rational mind. You know that you cannot live out moral relativism. You know that you cannot look in the face of the murderer and say, from my perspective, murder is wrong, but I understand that's just relative. From your perspective, obviously murder was right. I'm not right, you're not wrong. So you murder and I don't murder, but it's all relative. You can't live that way. It breaks down, doesn't it?
That's why we have a justice system in America. That's why America, which is not, does not explicitly sponsor Christianity as its religion, and is therefore not by definition a Christian nation, still has a justice system to create accountability where in a primitive society there wouldn't necessarily be.
All right. I have an appetite for food. If I don't eat, I'm going to starve to death. That's a physical fact. And if I don't sleep, I'm probably going to die as well. All right, it's a physical drive in order to live. Right and wrong are not physical. Okay, that woman on your left is my wife. She's a crazy woman because she's loved me now for 37 years. Now, if I took an x-ray of her heart, could I locate her love for me?
No.
If I took a blood test, could I locate her love for me?
So,
no. Love is not a physical thing, like eating food to continue my life, like getting sleep in order to continue my life. It is very ephemeral, very theoretical.
I argue that it's not.
Good. I think you're right. Love is not just a crapshoot. It's an incredible ability that we have to care for another person.
No, I'm arguing that it is not some sort of spiritual phenomenon or anything. I'm arguing that love can be explained through physical processes, that it could be explained through looking at human hormones and chemicals in our body.
But just because it's explained as a process doesn't get to the origin of it, right?
I mean, we can go through an entire neuroscience lecture about it and explain how the brain is affected by different hormones and how dopamine makes you happy.
Okay.
And serotonin, all that, and through these various combinations of chemicals, you begin to condition yourself to have certain biological responses whenever you see people that you love.
So wouldn't you say that, though, that that's irreducibly complex, that because of how complex it is, that it probably points towards a designer? But I think part of what Voltaire said, right, was the watch and the watchmaker. If there's a watch there that's that complex, that it points to a design. If you see intelligibility, you're going to look for some intelligence behind it, right?
I would argue that golden rule helps us get past these dilemmas, because I'm a collection of atoms I think, therefore I am, and you are a very similar collection of atoms that thinks. So if I murder you, if I steal from you, and I think that is right, who is to say that it is unjustifiable to murder me or to steal from me? And Golden Rule does attack racism. It attacks stealing. It attacks cannibalism. I wouldn't want to be raped. I wouldn't want to be cannibalized. I wouldn't want to be stolen from. Therefore, I will not do those things to other people. And it seems that whenever countries have defied the Golden Rule, that has changed.
Right.
Like the U.S. used to own slaves. Now we don't anymore because no one would want to be a slave. We had.
And the Bible was used to justify slavery, right?
What?
The Bible was used to justify slavery by some people groups, right?
I mean, yeah, but it was also used to say that it's wrong.
Right.
But I'm not.
I'm going there.
But that's not part of the argument
Right.
that I'm making.
Okay.
I would say that we come together. We've taken this concept of the Golden Rule and we have applied it to our morality. And the Golden Rule came from Greek philosophers. Christianity was not around when these Greek philosophers came up with the Golden Rule. The Bible does not claim the Golden Rule. Sure, it is a Christian value, but it does not own the concept of the Golden Rule.
Okay, if I'm saying, though, that the Bible is making a lot of truth claims and they're true, and then I go outside and say everything else is false, is that kind of narrow-minded of me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to look at the Greek philosophers and those who reasoned, whether it's Aristotle or Plato, whoever it is, I'm going to look and I'm going to study what they wrote and say, does that align with the logic of the Golden Rule? And if it does, that's great. I mean, Aristotle, he came to the conclusion that there is some creator behind this creation or behind this existence.
Yeah.
Right?
The homosexuality, the bisexuality,
And the bestiality?
all of those are still technically wrong today?
Yes.
Okay.
Because that's not just the Mosaic law. You go right back to Genesis 1 and 2, the good creation, and we read in Genesis 2:24, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother, be united to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh.
Okay.
But I think the real issue of homosexuality today has very little to do with sex. It has everything to do with freedom, love, and tolerance. But I would plead with you guys, remember, where freedom, love, and tolerance come from. They come from a God who loves you, a God who created you with a free will, and a God who's given you rights because you're intrinsically valuable, and a God who is tolerant. As Jesus bled and died on a cross, he prayed, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So what's so paradoxical is, we live in a culture where people are really getting upset about the homosexual issue that the Bible speaks to fairly clearly, and they're getting upset. And I think a lot of the emotions that are driving that is, don't take away my freedom, don't take away my love, and don't you dare be intolerant. But where does your idea of freedom come from? Where does your idea of love and experience of love come from? Where does your understanding of tolerance? Why should we be tolerant of those who disagree with us? It comes from God. See, if there is no God, you're not free. If there is no God, you're a complex biochemical reaction. You're not free. No, God says you are free because you're more than just a complex biochemical reaction. You're a human being created in his image with a free will. If there is no God, love is a sex drive. And you think she loves you? She doesn't love you. She just wants to have sex with you. That's all it is. And baloney, Christ says. That's false. We have an ability to love each other, to really care for each other, which doesn't necessarily mean I want to hop into bed with you. It means I want to work for your well-being because I care about you. And when you talk about tolerance, tolerance is not saying, oh, we all believe the same thing. Baloney, we don't all believe the same thing, and it's highly disrespectful if you're an atheist or an agnostic or a Buddhist or a Hindu for me to say, oh, you know, we really believe the same thing. No, we don't. Well, so what is tolerance? Tolerance is we disagree, but in spite of the fact that we disagree, we still love and respect each other. That's what tolerance is. I don't tolerate you because you give me $100. I tolerate you because you disagree with me and tell me I'm an idiot, and I still respect you because you're a human being created in the image of God, even though we disagree. You see, so when it gets into this homosexual issue, and we all get honked off over freedom, love, and tolerance, and if you tell me that homosexual sex is wrong, you're denying my freedom, you're denying my ability to love, and you're denying tolerance. That's wrong. Because freedom, love, and tolerance mean nothing, ultimately, objectively, if there is no God. If there is no God, we're just complex chemical reactions. You call certain things loving, you call other things unloving, totally arbitrary, just your taste. Like, do you prefer broccoli or Brussels sprouts? Just a taste. You like rape or you like respecting a woman? Just a taste. You like to cheat? You like to tell the truth? Just a taste. You like to be racist? You like to respect all people? Remember, if morality is relative, it's just a taste, friends. Guess what, guys? You can't live out your moral relativism because you have a conscience. You have a rational mind. You have the innate ability to love. Yeah, why? Because your matter and energy evolved to a higher order? Give me a break. Are you trying to kid me? You're a human being created in the image of God. That's why you have a conscience. That's why you have the ability to love. That's why you have a free will. And that's why you can be tolerant of someone who disagrees with you.